Maps and mapping apps are great tools to use when scouting and trying to locate big bucks. Our guest today has been using topo maps for decades and shares some tips and tricks on what features to look for before ever stepping foot in the field. All this and more today on the Rack Factor Podcast. Welcome to the Rack Factor Podcast, where we discuss the factors that lead to bigger bucks and a healthier deer herd. The Rack Factor Podcast is presented by Rack Fuel Premium Deer Nutrition. From premium deer mineral to deer feed, premium food plot seed to deer attractant, Rack Fuel products maximize the health and potential of your deer herd year-round. Visit rackfuel.com and fuel your herd. Our guest today was part of the golden age of outdoor television. Look at that. Some fresh-faced babies right there. He and his wife, Vicky.
Some memories.
Yes. He and his wife, Vicky, won Drury Outdoors Dream Season 4 Couples Edition. And the rest, they say, is history. Our buddy Rick Sanger joins us today on the Rack Factor Podcast. Rick, what's up, killa?
Nothing, Steve-O. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're good. We're good.
So, talk about that experience, Rick. That was like 15 years ago already. Time is flying, but
Yeah.
Talk about Dream Season. What was that like being on that TV show?
Yeah, 2005, 2006 it aired. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was an experience of a lifetime, really. But in that being said, it was a lot of work. A lot of people don't see how much work really goes into that, but I mean, yeah, it was. I mean, you got to meet so many really cool people, hunt so many different locations. It really exponentially advanced you with your experiences just because you were out there so much. They say, experience is the best teacher, and you learn from that experience. And I think just even those few years that we were doing that, it really, heightened what we did. So as far as hunting goes.
Was that kind of the most important thing you took away, was just gaining experience in filming your hunts? Or what would you say is the most important thing you learned while you were on that show?
We came away with some pretty good friends that we still keep in touch with here and there. Probably the most important thing was the friendships we built. But you also realized how much work it really is to do all that filming and everything. And so you realized there's a lot more to it than just what you see on TV. And I think once you put that in the mix and how many deer you actually don't kill because you are filming, you've really got to just dedicate yourself. And I think that was the biggest thing. It's just the dedication and the time. Especially if you didn't own like some really incredible property that you could just go out on, which we didn't. We hunted a lot of different places. And so that's kind of, I think, one of the biggest things was just how much work it really was in order to put together what we put together. Yeah.
So you still keep in touch with Mark and Terry and the curators and the McFerrins?
Some of them, yeah. And especially like Joe Schultz and Pam, we still keep in touch with them. And but a few of them, our lives kind of moved on, and they, they're still doing a lot of their stuff. And so it just kind of, I would say the first 10 years, we were still pretty much in contact with everybody. But like I said, it's been 16, 15 years, like you said. And so it's kind of, we've got 4-year-old twins at the house. So, I mean, your priorities really kind of switch around, and you just don't get the time to, make those texts or calls as much anymore. So.
Yeah. So do you still film your hunts? Do you still watch hunting shows?
Unfortunately, I still do film a lot of stuff, not to the degree like we used to with a cameraman, but we've since moved to Colorado. And I elk hunt a lot and bow hunt, and so I put a camera on my bow itself, just a little flip screen, open screen onto my stabilizer. I've been doing that for a number of years, and of course, I'll film everything except when you go to make the shot and it gets that vibration, you kind of lose some of that. And, 9 times out of 10, you don't go back and look at it anyway. So I think it's more of an addiction than anything else that I don't really do much with it, except show buddies or whatnot.
Sure.
But that's about it.
Nice. So, Rick, every story has a beginning, and we want to find out your hunting backstory. So, when did you start hunting, and did you have was your dad involved with that, or a relative? What got you going early on?
Yeah, I think I'm born and raised in Wisconsin, and in Wisconsin, you had to be 12 years old back then. I think they've moved it now since in order to be able to hunt.
I don't
And
think there's any age limit
no,
now.
right, I think they removed that age limit. But when I was growing up, it was 12 years old, and us boys, there was 3 boys in my family, we could not wait till we got to be 12 in order to go out and do some hunting. And that was kind of a rite of passage in our family. It really was. But that didn't keep me out of the woods when I was 5, 6, 7, with a BB gun and just chasing squirrels or chipmunks and, doing those kinds of things. So, those things really, I remember just being in middle school and taking my homework up to the woods behind our house with my 22 and go shoot a couple squirrels as I'm doing homework. So bring them home, and my mom was always ready to cook them up. I'd clean them and she'd cook them, and some of our family would eat them and some wouldn't. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. Felt like I was providing for the family back then. But back then it was so much different too. You could just, not that trespassing wasn't a thing, but it wasn't near like it is now. You could talk to the neighbor farmer and he's like, "Oh yeah, go ahead." And you got the one go ahead, and you were basically going there every year without even thinking about it. And especially when you're kids, you don't worry about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I can still recall going and bow hunting when I was 12, 13, setting up stands, and it's so much different nowadays. Literally when I could touch the bottom of my tree stand while I was still on the ground. 8, 9 feet tall is all we would have our stands off the ground. We didn't need to go any higher than that. And deer would still walk right underneath you. The deer herd has evolved, in the last 40 years for sure, as far as, what you have to do as a hunter in order to not be detected and harvest your deer.
Yeah. So you grew up in Wisconsin. Obviously, you don't have a ton of critters, to chase like you do out in Colorado where you're at now. But whitetail deer, that was kind of that was the big one, right? That was
It was.
the big chase animal that we're all after. How has whitetail hunting evolved for you?
So yeah, whitetail was the thing. I would come out to Colorado back then, but just for a week and chase elk. But our deer season in Wisconsin and the other states, we're literally starting in September and going until December, some January. So when I met my wife, she was like, "Oh, you're a hunter." Her being born and raised here in Colorado, she knew hunting as, yeah, the guys grab their camper, they go up to the mountains for a week, they hunt for their week, and then they come back and hunting is done. Well, when she realized that our season starts in September and doesn't end until December or January, she really realized what, being a hunter's wife really meant. Because back in the heyday, we were hunting 4, sometimes 5 states a year, depending on what tags we drew back then. So for whitetails, and then plus, are coming out here to either New Mexico or Utah or Colorado to hunt for elk or mule deer or whatnot. So yeah, it's evolved as far as that goes. And but yeah, and nowadays I want to say I'm not. I don't know. Mostly I shoot a longbow instead of a compound. I still own a couple compound bows, and I still enjoy it. But I think, especially when I'm up on the mountains, carrying that nice little 1.5 pound longbow, and just the thrill of getting that close to a big animal like a good herd bull or even a young bull, whatever, it's pretty incredible experience up there. But But yeah, whitetails were definitely like the forte of what we chased. I mean, Wisconsin boys, Minnesota guys like Tom, whatever. It was the whitetails. I mean, and there's no animal on the face of this earth that can even come close to a whitetail and what they do and what they know. I mean, not any mule deer, not any elk. You know, there's just not a species out there that's really like a whitetail deer. There's just not.
Yeah, agreed.
So, Rick, when did scouting with maps become part of the equation for you?
I would say back in the mid to late 80s. I was in college in the late 80s. And first year I really came out here to Colorado was, I think, in 1988. And it was all about topo maps. There was no GPSs back then. So we would literally grab a topo map. We'd order one for the area we were going to. We'd laminate them. They would always be in our pack. You know, we'd have our topo maps and we'd have our compass with us. And, usually I'd carry at least 2 compasses with me and my topo map. But reading the topography, and because when we would come out to Colorado to elk hunt, we knew where we wanted to park. And then we would travel and we would look at our topo maps on which is the best route to get up there. You know, there wasn't Google Maps or Google Earth or any of that kind of stuff back then. You couldn't just download that app, which I use now, Google Earth, but you couldn't do that. So you were looking at the topo maps themselves and deciding which drainage you wanted to go, or was this area too steep? Is it not too steep? What saddles did you want to hunt? And, you know, we would pick a bench that you would want to set up your camp on. So basically the late 80s is when I really got into using topo maps and deciding on, and just reading it more for my own safety as much as anything, on how to get from one location to the other. But then it started to evolve where you would see what kind of deer patterns, or not deer patterns, but at that time, the elk patterns and how the animals would utilize saddles and draws and things like that. And you could basically look at your map instead of climbing all the way up a mountain to see what was on the other side. If you wanted to go up there, and which area, you could go to the left of the mountain, you could go to the right of the mountain. If you saw some of the topography that really, pulled a couple of the draws together, or a couple of really good saddles that you thought they'd be using, then you would decide to go that direction. So it was cutting down a lot of your boot time, that you were just hiking out there. So I think that really is when it started to evolve for me. But then, hunting public ground in Wisconsin, we used to start doing the same thing. We would start pulling topo maps, and some of the slightest topography changes would make the biggest difference for where those big bucks and does, and all the deer in particular, would actually travel through. So then we really honed in on reading that topography maps. And I mean, I was going to say, I got one right here. This is just one of the maps that I have from, I don't know how long ago, but you can see the thing. I mean, this map in particular is 4 foot by 6 foot. I just literally pulled it out from, one of my my hunting zones. So I got like a hunting room, and so I'm like, I knew I had some of these still laying around, and this is actually Utah. So I actually killed a really nice 6-point bull on public ground because in this map helped a lot doing that. So, but yeah, so that's but we would just throw those maps in our packs. And that's kind of the stuff that we use then for whitetails as well. I mean, I've got all these other kind of maps where like we use these nowadays too still. And these actually show, before OnX hunts came out and stuff like that, we'd use these because on these maps it shows landowners. Is it BLM? Is it forest preserve, national forest, whatever, or is it private land? But these are all the same thing. These are all a topo map. But, you can see it's got all the topography and stuff on there, but it also shows landowners. So then we started using a lot of maps like this. But as far as out here goes, we would, the GPSs finally started coming out. But as everybody that's my age knows, I mean, when they first came out, they had a delineation of X amount of feet, yards, meters, what you might call it. So they weren't near as accurate due to the military. I don't know what they actually even called it, but it was a military code that was sitting in it that would make it less accurate than what you wouldn't pinpoint. They had that in there because they were concerned about, the other countries and things like that, other militaries getting into it. But yeah, so that's what really got us going into it. But then as far as whitetails, it's all about it, a lot more about the subtle spots, the subtle things like that those whitetails would go on, like the little benches that are going to face out, either east or west or north or south or whatever you're looking at on that ridge where those mature bucks like to bed on. I mean, it might be a little bench as big as your kitchen table, and you can find that if you know what to look for in those topo maps, and that really helps you to decide where those big bucks could be located at or bedding, because that's what they like. They like them little benches.
So that's the type of features and topography you're looking for is the benches and saddles, or what else that you're really looking for?
Yeah, and if it's if you have a prominent westerly wind, you want to, those bucks will sit on that west side of a drainage and look for a little bench on that west side. That wind will come up over the top of it. They'll have their back to it and they'll be looking out towards the east. So if that little bench is facing that direction, that's just going to be a good location to look for, or to, anticipate a mature buck to be on that location. So, and of course, a lot of that has to do with how close is it to food plots, or, to food in itself, a big field or something like that. Them big bucks don't want to be right on the edge of a field if they can really help it. They like to be back in somewhat. So you want to put that into your, as you're looking at that map as well, how close is it to certain features and things like that. And the more you do it and the more you kind of pinpoint. So that's why, like, in the beginning, we would have a map and then we would just go out and literally we would, I don't want to say run the woods, but we would run the woods, and you'd pop a big buck up and you would look on your map and you would mark it. Boom, boom. This is where he was. And then you would also mark which direction did he go, because they always have an escape route. And they'll always have more than one escape route, really. But you came in from this direction, the wind was going this direction, they went that direction. You just write those notes down. And before you know it, you start to tabulate all of this information, and it really paints a really clear picture for you. So I think that kind of knowledge was invaluable. So in trying to figure out where those big bucks were bedded, because that, to me, that's probably one of the most important things, is knowing where they're living. Where do they live? So then you can decide how you can hunt them. How you are going to access the place, where you're going to put your stands, how close you can get, how close do you have to stay back for a morning, for an afternoon, all that kind of stuff. Then starts, you start to put that all together, and that's what kind of makes the difference. So
I know the first time that I really used maps was hunting with you down in Kansas when we were down at Fort Riley.
Right.
Although that map kind of got us in trouble. At least my inability to read it while you were driving.
That was my co-pilot. Yes.
Yeah. All right, Steve. So we might as well share this one, because this is definitely unique. So we just got to Fort Riley, and the plan was the first night we were going to drive around and do some scouting, and then the same thing in the morning. And like I said, Rick was driving, I'm reading the maps, and huge. What was it? Was it 100,000 acres?
It's a lot.
It's a lot,
quite that big,
right?
but it's a lot. Yeah.
A lot. And there was areas that were open all the time, and then there were spots that were closed all the time, and then they had pieces that would open and close, depending on, some of it would be just a few days and then it would close. And we were driving around and we're going through, and I'm reading the map, and I'm like, I don't think we're supposed to be here. And Rick, he kept going a little bit farther. He goes, well, let's just see where it goes. And we're looking, and all of a sudden there is a vehicle flying up behind us, lights flashing. And I'm like, yeah, I think we're in trouble. And that truck pulls up on the side of us, window down, and just said, turn around and follow us out as fast as you can. So we turned around and drive out of there. And we got a chewing. I mean, for sure. I thought we were getting kicked out that night. But yeah, we drove into an area we weren't supposed to be in. And did the bomb go off on the ride out, or what was it once we parked?
If I recall, the gentleman that the military police, they were actually told us if we literally had gone perhaps another mile before they caught us, they were turning around because they were not going to risk their lives to get to us, because where we were headed is in an active bombing zone. So they were bombing with airplanes, overhead craft, helicopters and airplanes. So they said that we needed to get debriefed by, their commander at one point. They're like, yeah. So, yeah, we really thought, I mean, they read the riot act, but in the end, they ended up getting another call. So they're like, all right, you guys pay attention to what you're doing and don't ever do it again, or you'll never be welcome back here again. So in hindsight, we got like that close to being in some really could have been in a lot of trouble. So
bad.
But
Yeah, and you were in the stand after that, and you would hear those bombs go off periodically, and at times, God, you could feel it in the tree just shake. So it was crazy when he's like, "You guys were almost right in the bomb area." That was close.
It was fun though. It was fun.
It was fun, and you had those maps down. I mean, you had it. You knew. I mean, as soon as that one area opened up, you went right in there. And there's big bucks in there. We had a couple close.
I got a great story about that.
Yeah.
I got a great story about that with Tom.
Yeah, that's a bad one too.
We find this location, and we actually saw this buck go into this draw. We watched this buck go into this draw, and we're like, we got to put a stand up in there. So I don't know if we like drew straws or flipped a coin.
We flipped a coin, and I lost.
Yeah, and so I sat the stand the first night, and that buck comes in, but he literally stays out probably 25, 30 yards through some thick stuff.
He stayed on. Those trees are tough to hang anything in, and you were on the front of it, and I was in the back, and I was filming, and it came right in front of me. I mean, it was close to me, but and you kept saying, "Take my bow," and I'm like, "No, I lost the coin." So I just filmed, and he never circled out and around.
Right. Yeah. That was a pretty buck, probably 160 class, I would say.
Yeah, I would have guessed 160. Yeah. 11 pointer.
Yeah, maybe high 150s. Yeah. So, and that's the same thing. So, so then we would go home after that hunt, and we're like, okay, this is where some of these bucks are traveling through. And so then we would kind of try to emulate that again. Okay, where are some other spots that are similar to this, some of this topography where they're traveling through and whatnot. And I think the next night I found a spot, and I literally went and climbed up it, and I just sat on a tree branch. And I watched a few really good bucks come through, and they were in that area. So I told Tom, I'm like, hey, let's go. I'm gonna set you in this tree that I was in last night, and I'm gonna go put another stand up. So we got there, and I think I was putting the stand up, or I put the stand up, and then I'm like, all right, Tom, I'm gonna head down. I literally only went probably 300-400 yards from where you were at, and Tom is playing with his camera arm. All right.
Yeah.
I'll let Tom tell you the rest of this part.
Wait a minute. So first of all, we were already running way behind because you got a flat tire. So we had to run into Manhattan to get that gel that you put in to be able to just get your truck out. So it was late, and those trees, like I said, they're not perfect. I'm kneeling on my platform trying to ratchet my camera arm in. And I sprayed some of our attractant in opening 20 yards away. And I don't even know why, because I was looking down, but all of a sudden I just thought, something's not right. and I look over and a freaking giant. I mean, a giant buck is right there. I don't have my release on. I'm wearing just a t-shirt. I'm trying to get my
Where's
release
your
on.
bow?
No, my bow was hanging, but there was no arrow knocked, unfortunately, and that was really the worst part. So I was filming, and I'm not going to say what brand because they have really good products. I just didn't like this particular rest, but the arrow had to go in through the front, and when I was trying to do it, we're rushing to try to get everything situated. The knock did not click all the way. So when that buck was moving and went into an open area, I went to draw back, and my arrow just fell right off and just right down to the ground. And I'm just looking down and thinking, you've got to be kidding. I mean, giant. I mean, at least 180, just a giant. I texted Rick and I'm like, I hope he comes your way. I'm like, but that was a bad day.
But
That's a
literally,
bad day.
15 minutes earlier, whatnot, and you're ready, you're set up, and that comes at that
right.
15, 20 yards, and it's a done deal.
That's all we needed was 5 minutes. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Didn't you call him back in? Didn't he the arrow go over and then he?
I never shot,
but yeah,
just it dropped. He just kind of walked off. I tried snort wheezing him in that, and he just looked, but he never came in. He never ran off. He just went. I just was hoping. That's what I was hoping he was heading your way.
Right.
Because there wasn't many tree lines. So, if he followed a tree line, chances are he was heading towards you. I didn't want to.
I think I recall you saying something about he kind of had his nose down, just kind of smelling that area where you probably had sprayed. That might have really, kept him there and maybe didn't spook him as much because he still had some of that scent or some attraction or something that he was kind of looking for, or, just, sometimes that's the thing about those attractants and, bait or any of that other kind of stuff is sometimes it might just give you that extra little moment or edge that you need, even if they're not in there mowing it down or something. It might take their mind off of an arrow falling out of a tree or something like that that might make a difference. So.
We could have a whole show over my close call things with gross boon bucks.
Yeah,
need a box of tissues on my desk.
We'll get those sent over for the next one. Well, and I have a ton of stories too, time spent with both of you in the tree. But yeah, we're going to have to keep it moving here. So you talked a little bit about, the evolution of the map, Rick, and how you got your first GPS and now the maps are on our phones, which is pretty awesome. So how have the new apps, like OnX and, you mentioned some other websites that you utilize. How have they changed the way you're hunting now?
Especially out west, it makes a huge difference because of all the public versus private. Out here, there's a lot of landowners that will put signs up that's really on public land. They'll put signs on certain roads, gravel roads, dirt roads, 2 tracks that say no trespassing, private, whatnot. But in reality, and they even put gates up on public ground just to keep people out. And they'll do that until they get caught. And then, they have to take it down, they do. But I mean, the land out here is so vast that it very rarely does anyone do anything about it anyway. So that's actually become a lot more useful for the Western hunters as far as anything, having those OnX maps. You can look at where those lines are, and if there's a warden or something, you can literally show him, this is where I've been. If you have it on your GPS, will do the same thing on your GPS. You can get the chips that you can put in into your GPS, the little mini SD cards that will have all the landowner maps and things and landowner properties. And you can literally show your footprints to to a warden or something like that, showing, hey, I didn't cross any private land or something, because there are issues with people that don't want you out on certain pieces of property and things like that. So for the guy that's being honest and being on the right side of the road or the fence, it can really help you. But so that on this aspect really makes a difference. But also, even in Wisconsin, we started utilizing some on some private land, some public land, where you didn't realize there was this sliver of public that went back down through, because it's private, private, private. And then all of a sudden there's a small sliver. There's a few pieces of property not that far from Madison that I used to utilize, that where it was maybe 100 yards of private that or public that came up to the road, and then it was a lot more, a lot more acreage behind that you could have access to. And so we did a lot of that. And then there's also, utilizing the maps, and some of that maps with landowners in Wisconsin and other states where they had put their properties into, into that, I forget what they actually call it, but it's a program where they can save on their taxes, so that they allow access to hunters. So we would look that information up. I haven't done that in 15 years, but you would look up that information and see what kind of access that gave you, because then maybe some of that property, maybe you wouldn't even hunt that property, but you'd hunt the public or something that's behind it. So we would look at those maps and utilize the OnX maps with, who is the property owner here, and then you could go into and find out if any of that land was under that classification of, being able to trespass on that property or hunt on that property even as well. So OnX Maps is a really good map program to use. I use a lot of Google Earth, just because it can show me a lot of things that the Google map or OnX doesn't show me, as far as some of the satellite imaging. I also really like the fact where you can take your phone, if it's on your phone, and you can you flip it sideways a little bit, and it will give you more of a side angle of it, the topography of it, so you can actually see dips and hollows and things like that. So just like I was talking before about on the topography maps, when you can see just those small increments of difference, and that's where a lot of the whitetails and the animals will utilize those, you can do that same thing with Google Earth. So you can, if you have an area and you'll spend literally hours and hours and hours a day on that thing, just trying to really differentiate between those topographies. But if you do it here, then you're not out there busting up the woods and all that kind of stuff too. And it's just going to give you areas, especially if you're in a big area. Say you're in a big area in Wisconsin or something, and you're at some huge national forest or something, and you want to, get an idea of what kind of draws they're using or saddles. You could do that on those kind of properties. So there's a lot of good ones.
When you're looking at those variations in topography, for you, what is your preference? Do you like corners? Do you like saddles? Do you like pinch points? What areas are you focusing on
Yes.
when you're yes, all of the above?
All the above. It is. It's all the above. You don't pick just one. You pick a combination of them. Where's the best pinch point? Where's the best saddles? Where's the best draws? Where's the best tree lines? Where's that best transitions? And you literally have to put all those things together. It's not just one thing. It's just like a lot of people say, and the analogy is it's a puzzle. You are putting that puzzle together, and it's not just one big piece. It's a whole puzzle, and it can change from year to year, depending on all of a sudden a neighbor moves in that's got dogs, or, hunting pressure over here from some other people, or, you had a windstorm and it knocked some stuff down, or, this field now this year is corn versus next year it's going to be soybeans, or it's set aside, or, all those things is part of that puzzle, will make a difference for how you're going to hunt that area or that zone. So it's not a simple answer as which is your best, which is your favorite. It's which ones in combination with other ones. And again, we haven't really discussed it, but how are you going to access that area? I mean, because in my opinion, we'll talk about this another day, but access is such a huge piece of the puzzle of killing a big deer. I mean, at getting in and getting out. I mean, that's, you can find them and where they are, but if you don't do it right and get in there right and get out of there right, it's not going to make much difference. So, just put all those pieces together. I mean, the person that studies and does that, they're the ones that are going to be rewarded. So I once heard many years ago that 10% of the hunters kill 90% of the big bucks, because those 10% of guys are putting these pieces of puzzles together, or they own the right pieces of property. So that, I mean, that has something to do with it too. So, but I think the more and more I talk to some buddies that are still in Wisconsin, I mean, there's big bucks getting killed on public land every year. And I don't mean like 140, 150. I mean 160, 170 plus stuff is getting killed in Wisconsin that I know of on public land, every year right now. So it's not like just because you don't own a piece of property, you can't kill a big buck. They're out there. Just do your research. You got to just do your research, and you just got to figure it out. So don't give up just because you don't own 1,000 acres, because you don't own 20 acres, because you have to hunt just public. There's a lot of things you can do to figure it out, and knowing how to access, utilize a boat, whatever you have to do, however you have to put some waders on to cross a creek, whatever you have to do in order to get back to some of these areas where these big bucks are living without, boogering them out of there and without them detecting you. I mean, don't give up. That would be my big thing to anybody out there that's listening to this. Just because you don't own property doesn't mean you can't kill a big buck. I mean, they're out there. You just have to do the work. So, but yeah, that's my fence post talk right there.
So Rick, earlier today, I sent you an OnX map of a farm I hunt.
Right.
And Steve's gonna put a graphics up for us to take a look at. Just looking at it, is there a spot that kind of jumped out at you? Not the whole thing, because I mean you only had a little bit, but was there a spot that you saw that you would concentrate on?
Well, just looking at it, it's a tough spot to hunt. It really is. It's a draw running north and south. So you got your predominant westerly winds running across it. So anything that's bedded on there, and one of the biggest things I've learned is the wind and the wind direction and how it swirls in those draws. I mean, that wind will come across the top, hit the other side, and bounce right back. And I mean, so you can't be on either side of it. You cannot be on either side of the bottom of that draw because of the way the wind will go through sometimes. Now, not always. I mean, you could get a northwest or an east southwest or whatever, a quartering wind that might not bounce, and it might, head down the draw. So if you're above it or you're below it, whichever the direction of the wind is going, you could get in there and hunt that stuff. But it's a fine line. It's really a fine line. And you stated that they are betting in that draw, and and the access to that is really tough. It's really tough just because you want to access from the southwest, which a lot of times the wind's coming out of either west, southwest, northwest, whatever. So those deer are going to be downwind of you as you walk past. Even if they're downwind 300-400 yards from you, they're still going to smell you. I mean, 300-400 yards is nothing for a whitetail deer to smell a human being. Not at all. And it's just access, and getting out of there is the hugest thing with that spot. So with that locations, where you had your red dot, that's kind of where you had your stand, kind of in the middle. which probably on the edge of where that draw goes down, or
Right.
you were on the top, right? So I mean, your wind's coming across there and it's blowing down into that thing, and it's going to come
Right.
back and blow back up. So I would say back off of that, get more
Yep.
toward the edge of those fields. I mean, even if you're only 10 yards in the woods, that way if you're going in the morning, you want to, you don't want to walk in that field. So it's one of those things too, is where how I like a lot of properties like that one is tricky, because in the morning you might access it one way and leave a different way, or in the afternoon you might access it one way and leave a different way. There might be four completely. A lot of times they will correspond with each other, but I mean there could be four different ways to get in and get out of that one location. Could
Right.
be. Typically there's not, but typically you're going to use at least. A lot of times I'll use at least two different directions that I end up going in and going out, just to keep those deer from smelling me, seeing me, hearing me, and those kinds of things. And hearing you, in my opinion, is the least important. They hear noises all the time. Of course, your human cadence, they know that human cadence. They know that of your boot prints. So change that up sometimes. I do. When I walk in, I'll walk in, stop, go, be a little more like a squirrel or something like that. Change that human cadence. It might not make a difference, but it might. So,
Right.
there's just certain things like that. But yeah, as far as your property that is on there, I would. There was a spot up on the northwest of where that red dot was, right off of that corner. Looked really good, that you might be able to access depending on your parking situation. And then also below it, so it would be southwest of that, there's another kind of corner in there that just bounce into that corner, into that 20, 30 yards in, depending. If you've got cameras out and they're going across the edge of that field, be able to shoot that field if you can.
Right.
But you don't want to sit right on the edge of the field either. Like, you don't want to silhouette yourself right, sitting over the edge of the field. You always want to be in a little bit. Just, it will really help you. Because a lot of times I've seen guys sit with their tree is sitting like this and the field's out here, and they'll have their stand right here. So when they come out, they can but if they're walking up that edge, you're silhouetting yourself to an extent. And they're going to see movement and all that kind of good stuff. So I saw a couple locations where maybe you want to just back in a little bit off of that field edge and catch that corner on the inside of that corner, because the deer love to be on, inside in the woods, inside corners. So if you've got an inside corner of your woods, or I guess it would be of the field in the woods, you want to be inside that 20, 30, 40 yards, 50 yards, depending on the topography and that kind of stuff too. So, but yeah, that's a tough spot to hunt. I see that already. So you
Yep.
really want to do your research. And if it was me, I'd have a pile. If that's where you're seeing a lot of your big mature bucks, I'd have a half a dozen stands in there for different winds and different conditions,
Right.
and just be animate about only hitting it when you really can. Those bucks love to walk, with that wind quartering to them. I mean, a quartering wind, those bucks love. So that gives you the ability to be on the upside or the downside of that quartering wind too, where they're not going to smell you. So you just got to kind of really, and that's where I talk about with knowing exactly where those big bucks are bedded. I mean, that big buck is within 100 yards of this one spot, and they won't always be, but a lot of times they will be. You can find those buck bedding spots where they bed here one day and literally 10 feet over another day, or wherever they're at. So, I mean, they get comfortable in there. And so, so that's what I would just, with that location, I mean, your access and getting in and getting out are huge. And a lot of people don't have the ability to go in and go out the same, except for in one location. So you're really, really limited, so that's why too. Like, if people ask me, we've been doing some stuff with laying out properties and buying properties and helping people buy stuff. And, that if you have multiple locations that you can access your property in those woods from, I mean, that's only going to help so much as far as hunting that property. So, but I mean, back in the day, hell, when we were 12, 15 years old, we'd go in one way, come out one way. You just go in and get out, and you go hunt and you come
Right.
back. It didn't matter. You didn't think about, your wind when you were walking in. You didn't think about all that kind of stuff, coming out and not bumping deer. I mean, so many times you just go in, you come out, walk that edge of that field because that was the easiest walking. That's what we used to do. Whatever was easiest is what we did. And nowadays it's not like that. You can't. If you want to kill a mature buck, you have to be animate about how you get in and how you get out, and not bother them when you're, going in and going out. So it's huge. I mean, that's probably one of the most important things I've learned in the last 20 years is access and getting out. So it looks like a
Yep.
great
Thank you.
property. I'm ready to bring my bow up there and go,
Bring
access
bring
it.
it. Yeah, bring it.
Sounds like you could teach the master class, Rick, on using maps and finding those nooks and crannies where these big bucks hang out.
A lot of practice. A
Yeah,
lot of practice. Yeah. But like I said, anybody can do it. Just, you got to get your map out and just, run the woods, chase up some big bucks, mark where they were, figure it out.
that is a great strategy for sure. So, hey, we've come to the point in the show where we call it the lightning round. I
Oh, great.
throw some rapid fire questions at you, and first thing that comes to mind, just give us your answer, and then you can. I mean, if you want to expound on it too, you can. But this is just kind of a fun thing that we do, and it kind of sheds a little light on the fun part of hunting, anyway. So,
Okay.
are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's rock it.
All right. First question: what's your favorite tree stand snack?
Oh God, Snickers bar. Even though I hate to say it, because two things I was told not to eat while I'm hunting: meat and chocolate. Because supposedly the meat, goes through your sweat glands and things like that, and you know, deer can tell if you're a predator. That's one of the philosophies that I heard, and the same as chocolate. Like, they can smell chocolate better than they can whatever. But man, I mean, it's hard not to, especially, I mean, you got Halloween, and, you grab a big bag of Halloween candy, it's November, you've got all that trick or treat candy left over, you grab a few little candy bars. Oh yeah. Yeah, anything sweet. I mean, although once in a while we'll do Pop Tarts, and we do what's called Pop Tart roulette. So, but of course you can't have that crinkly paper. So we'll take the Pop Tarts, we'll put them in Ziploc baggies, and you don't know what they are. So you just reach in and you pull one out, and that's why it's roulette, because you don't know what flavor you're going to get. So,
Nice.
yeah, Pop Tart roulette's always a good one too. So,
Nice.
but they
Nice.
usually are good for like one day, because by the time the next day comes, they're pretty crumbly. So,
Yeah, they get a little stale for sure. All right. Favorite state to hunt? You've been to a lot. What's your favorite?
Alaska.
Really? Why?
Yep. Yep. I don't know. I've hunted a lot of places: New Zealand, South Africa, Mexico, all over the United States. The moose hunt I did in Alaska was probably the most challenging hunt I've ever done in my life. It was one of those things. Me and a buddy jumped on a plane, got a couple of planes, got on a float plane, threw a raft in there in our gear, went up this river. Guy threw us out of the plane, basically said, "I'll see you in 2 weeks," 56, 70 miles, something like that, 60 miles downriver at these GPS coordinates. And like, good luck. You're in wolf country, grizzly country. I mean, it rained on us almost every day, just flat out rained on us. But it's mano a mano with the wilderness. And so I think that experience made that state be that state. So, so if I could only pick one hunt to ever do again, or a state or a hunt that was like incredible, it was probably that. But I mean, you can't get over your own home state, though, Wisconsin, either. as far as going after whitetails. I mean, but I've had incredible experiences in Illinois, in Iowa, Ohio, um, Minnesota. As far as bear hunting, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that in Minnesota. So if you want to bear hunt, so I
Right.
mean, we used to do that all the time. They'd literally give you free bear tags for a while there. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So a lot of states are really good states, but I mean, how do you beat Colorado as far as elk hunting? And I mean, so it's just one of those things where there's so many unbelievable states. But if I had to pick like just one, I mean, Alaska is insane. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's real hunting. You know what I mean? It's real hunting up there. So,
Fair. Fair. All right. Question 3. What is, in your opinion, the most important factor in killing a big buck?
well, obviously it's location. I mean, if you're not in a location that has big bucks, you're not going to kill a big buck. So the number one thing that I look at is, are there big bucks in this location? Because there's not big bucks across the United States. So location has to be the number one factor in killing big bucks. I mean, there's a reason certain guys kill big bucks every year. I mean, they have the property and they know how to hunt it. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that just because you have the property that you're going to kill them, but it's like the number one thing. And then you have number 2, 3, 4, 5, and I mean, down to number 48, 150, whatever, that factors that go into killing that big buck. But the number one thing I think is location. You have to be able to be in a location where they have big bucks. If you have 40 acres and the biggest buck you've seen on your property and all the neighbors' property is 130 inches, that's a big buck on your property. You're not going to kill a 160. It's just not going to happen. I mean, you hear about stories once in a while where one comes from 5 miles down the way because it's a rut or something else. But if you don't have the location, you're not going to kill a big buck. That's just my opinion.
Well, we're kind of coming down to the end here. You
That's
gave
it. Where's question number 5?
You gave some great answers. We can wrap this sucker up, put a bow on it. So, Rick, you always have your hand in a lot of different things. You're always busy doing stuff. What's next for you as far as kind of with hunting, and what do you got your fingers in now that you're kind of excited about or that kind of keeps you going?
I since moving out here to Colorado, like I said, I've really gotten into longbow hunting with my longbow, which has really been a lot of fun. I mean, it's cool. There's just a different aspect of it. So I really enjoy that part of where my hunting career is kind of evolving to and going towards. But I still do a lot of the same stuff. I still apply to go to Iowa to whitetail hunt. I get back to Illinois every couple of years to whitetail hunt. That's all kind of staying the same, kind of on an even keel. But I mean, this year I drew a mule deer tag here just in literally around my house. So I'll be out there with my cameras and stuff and figuring out those mule deer, which they don't compare to a whitetail. I mean, even the big mature bucks. I mean, and I'm talking 180 plus mature white or mule deer. It doesn't compare to a 180 whitetail, 170 whitetail, 160 whitetail. And in my opinion, I mean, so other people might have had different experiences, but they're just a completely different animal. So, but I still like them. It's still fun. So I'll have cameras out this year to do that. Last year I handed in 25 preference points to go hunt an area here in Colorado for a draw tag, and I didn't kill my bull. I mean, I was into them every day, but it was more of, like I told my wife, it was kind of one of those Jenny Craig things, because I was out there for 21 days and I lost 19 pounds and I loved it. I just loved it. And so, I mean, I could have killed some bulls, but I just didn't. And I missed out on you two coming out here and to visit me. So you guys got to go hunt my my spot out here. And so, maybe I can get you guys out here when I can join you again. So when that 7x7 is mounting that cow and you guys are sitting there with, your bow on your shoulder like this, like, oh, wow, this is like National Geographic out here. We're just going to
It
watch
wasn't
them.
on the shoulder.
So, but yeah, so, but yeah, so yeah, we'll get out there and do some of that stuff. But I've been really busy. Like I said, I've got 4-year-old twins. I'm really involved in my Mesa County search and rescue. So I'm a first responder. I've been doing that for 8+ years now, doing a lot of that kind of stuff. And that gets me out a lot too. But as far as hunting, I won't stop, but I kind of slowed down a little bit. I think part of your life just puts you there, but I think I make it more important for, the times I do hunt now, I utilize it as a more important kind of thing, where before it was just like I go every night, but then you don't utilize how important that time really is. But now you're much more thinking about what kind of time am I going to be spending out in the woods versus something else that I could be doing or should be doing. So
Sure.
I think as far as that goes, it's a lot different, but yeah. So
And you're also helping guys with finding ways to access their own properties too, aren't you?
yeah, yeah. I've been doing that the last few years now. Done things as far as even flying all the way out to North Carolina to help a guy lay out his property. I was out there for a few days, and I mean that property is turning. It's incredible. I mean it was. I don't want to say a mess when we got there, but he's turned into a really good friend of mine. But yeah, he's really learned a lot about how to access those big bucks and utilizing those saddles and pinch points and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, I mean, to the point where he's got like 300 acres, and because of the way I told him he had to access the property, he's buying an electric bike because he doesn't want to walk all the way around to get to where he's got to get to access it. But I'm like, you cannot literally walk down through this, this one draw that you want to walk to access it, because you're just going to bust them out, or they're going to smell you, or you might not even know that you did it. And that's the thing. 9 times out of 10, you don't even know that you're, busting a deer out of there. They just smell you and they sneak out. They don't blow, they don't run. They're too far away even sometimes that you even know. So, but yeah, I've been doing that a lot lately, and it's a lot of fun actually. Just kind of playing with other people's properties and laying them out and helping them out and do that kind of stuff. So I enjoy that too. So yeah, they're starting to see more big bucks.
You kind of teased that a little earlier about how we access our stands and our properties. Is that something we could maybe talk to you about on a future episode here? Get you back on and talk about what you've learned from consulting in land management and helping other guys?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we could talk for hours about that. Just accessing and getting in and getting out of properties. But to me, it's worth that conversation. I mean, you would ask what's the number one thing, and I said, location of where big bucks are. You have to hunt that. But literally, the number 2 isn't even necessarily, well, it is stand placement, but it's how you get to that stand and how you get out of that stand is just as important as, or more important as, where that stand actually is. Some of the best spots on your property, you can't even have a stand. You will not, or should not have a stand. I should put it that way. Where you've got your trail cameras and that buck's going up and down that trail every day, and you're like, this is where I got to put my camera or put my stand. It might not be where you should have a stand. There's a lot of things to talk about as far as that goes too. Just because there's a reason. There's that old saying is the first time you hunt the stand is the best time. Well, a lot of that's because you're not accessing right, or you're not getting out of there right. So if you access it right and you get out of there right, your second, third, fourth, 100th time on that stand could be just as good as your first time on that stand. So that's it. That's just my opinion. And yeah, that's all about, we could talk about that for a long time as far as accessing, getting in, getting out.
What do you think, Tom? Should we do it?
Absolutely.
All right. I think we should.
Absolutely.
All right, Rick. Well, hey, thanks for your time tonight. It's been good catching up with you and reliving some of those stories.
Feels like I haven't seen you guys forever, so it'd be cool. this is just kind of nice just to catch up with you all.
Right. Yep. Thanks again, Rick.
And all your millions of listeners. So that's good too.
Yeah. You gonna sneak out to see us in Iowa this year?
I think I'll be going through that area, but it'll probably be like Halloween night because I'm going to hunt Illinois. I'll be in Illinois on the 1st of November. So I tried to get my Iowa tag this year, but I was denied. So
yeah,
which I heard that happened to a lot of people this year in Iowa.
Yeah,
a lot of people that thought they might draw didn't draw this year.
Yeah, it was bad. The worst I've ever seen.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I feel bad for everybody except for I got mine.
Except for you. You got yours. That's less people that'll be out there bothering you in your spot.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, we'll give something a try. Who knows? Maybe I'll be in Minnesota this year with my longbow. So, or
come on out.
Up on Steve-O's dad's land. We'll go up there and kill that one buck that everybody's after on that property. That 200 incher. So.
Did you say 100 incher?
No, 200.
I haven't seen a 200 incher
everywhere up there, right?
Right, behind every tree.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way some people think. I mean, you own private land. You've got to have the big bucks, right?
Of course.
I mean, isn't that's what people think? But
yeah.
No, go out and hit some public. That's what I would say. Find some good public. It's out there. So
good advice,
might be better
man.
than your dad's private. So
yeah.
But yeah.
All right.
I appreciate catching up with you guys. And like I said, yeah, let's do it again.
Let's do it again real soon. All right. Thanks, Rick.
All right, guys.
Thanks,
Catch you later.
Thanks for joining us on the Rack Factor podcast, presented by Rack Fuel Premium Deer Nutrition. Listeners of the podcast can enjoy 20% off Rack Fuel Premium Deer Mineral, Feed, or Food Plot Seed by entering the code FACTOR, that's FACTOR, at checkout. Visit rackfuel.com now for 20% off premium deer nutrition products and fuel your herd.